Lucas was never a boy who stood out. From the start, he felt on the fringes of society, as if he had been made to be invisible. For him, school was a place that brought more pain than learning. Every day was a challenge, a constant struggle to fit into an environment where he knew he didn't belong. The kids in his class never seemed to miss an opportunity to make him the butt of every joke. His classmates, especially the boys, made fun of him for everything. The way he walked, a little clumsily, his messy hair, his simple clothes, everything was cause for laughter and mockery. But the worst part was not what they said, but how he felt when he heard them. He knew there was no escaping it. There was no place where he could hide, no room where he could take refuge. Deep down, Lucas believed that he was a problem for the world, that his mere existence caused discomfort to others. And this feeling didn't just appear at school, but also at home. His parents, with their busy work schedules, hardly realized how much Lucas was suffering. They saw a quiet son, but thought it was just a phase, that he was growing up and would soon get over it. But Lucas couldn't get over it. The bullying, which at first was just words thrown in the air, turned into something heavier. When he went to school, every step he took down the street brought a lump to his throat. He tried to hide his insecurities, but it was impossible. The bullying moved on to social media, where people started sharing photos of him, taken without his consent, with cruel messages. This made him close himself off even more, withdrawing from any attempt to socialize. He preferred to stay isolated in the corner of the room, away from the laughter and stares. He feared what others would think of him. Every day, he felt that he was getting closer to being swallowed up by the pain of rejection. At times, he even thought it might be easier to disappear. It was as if he were invisible, but in a cruel way. There were days when, looking in the mirror, Lucas couldn't recognize the person he saw. A sad boy with tired, dull eyes. He wanted so much to be different. He wanted people to see the value he had inside, but the words of his schoolmates kept echoing in his head like a relentless echo. "You'll never amount to anything. Look at the wimp. Who wants you like that?" These words, which seemed innocent to others, kept hammering away in Lucas' head day after day. But he didn't want to admit how much it affected him. He kept it all inside, trying to believe that one day it would end. He tried to convince himself that none of it mattered, but the emptiness he felt inside, the sense of inadequacy, seemed to be stronger than any positive thought he could have. Lucas was lost, and worst of all, he didn't know how to get out of that deep hole he was buried in. Loneliness became his only companion, and Luna, his pit bull, was the only reason he hadn't succumbed to the pain yet. She was the only one who didn't judge him, who didn't see him as an easy target for mockery. Luna was there silent, but with an unconditional love that Lucas was beginning to understand. She was, in a way, his only light in such a dark world. But what he didn't know was that this relationship with Luna was about to make all the difference to his life. The only question he asked himself was, did he still have a chance of getting out of that darkness? Did fate have something in store for him besides suffering? On one of those days of silent agony, when Lucas felt more alone than ever, Luna seemed to understand the weight he was carrying. She was always by his side, like a shadow, following him wherever he went. Even when he withdrew from the others, secluded himself in the corner of his house or at school, Luna was there, with her silent presence and her constant gaze of companionship. The short-haired pit bull with expressive eyes didn't need to say anything to let Lucas know that she was with him. It was as if she felt the pain he was trying to hide. In the most difficult moments, when Lucas would lock himself in his room and stare out of the window for hours, Luna would lie next to him, leaning her body against his, almost as if it were a silent promise that he wasn't alone. And indeed, she was right. Even though Lucas wasn't sure how to deal with the pain he felt, his connection with Luna seemed to be the only thing that made him believe that there was still something good in the world. But things began to change in an unexpected way when, on a seemingly normal day, Lucas was confronted by a group of boys who always made fun of him. It was one of those days when he simply didn't have the strength to hide his pain. He tried to stay in his corner, as always, but as he crossed the school corridor, he was intercepted by three of the most popular boys in the class. The boys, as always, began to make jokes and insults, laughing at his appearance, the way he walked, and even how he was dressed, in a simple uniform and worn-out sneakers. All Lucas wanted to do was disappear, but he couldn't. He felt like he was being pushed into a situation he didn't know how to get out of. The pain tightened his throat, but this time something inside him was different. Luna, who always accompanied him to the school gate, was there that day too, like on so many others. But when the boys began to surround him, something surprising happened. She, who had always been calm and friendly, completely changed her attitude. She barked ferociously in a way that no one had ever seen before. The sound echoed through the school corridors, and the boys, initially laughing, immediately stopped. But the change in Luna wasn't just in her bark. She stepped forward, her teeth bared, her posture firm and determined, something Lucas had never imagined he would see in her. She was protecting him. The scene was so unexpected that the group of boys was paralyzed. That vision of Luna, so sweet and kind at normal times, was now an uncontrollable force of protection. She was willing to defend Lucas in any way. He, for his part, was paralyzed, unable to believe what he was seeing. The boys began to hesitate, but the leader of the group, a large boy who was always ready to intimidate, advanced towards Luna. He tried to push her away with a sudden gesture, but Luna, quicker than anyone could have imagined, jumped up behind him and barked even louder, her eyes fixed on him with immense determination. She was willing to do anything to ensure Lucas's safety, and this was reflected in every move she made. The boy, feeling the pressure, backed away, still frightened by the courage of such a faithful animal. For Lucas, that moment was surreal. He had never imagined that a being as pure and without malice as Luna could awaken such strength. But there she was, fighting for him in a way he had never been defended before. Something inside Lucas began to change at that moment. He felt that Luna, with all her loyalty and courage, wasn't just saving him from a bullying situation. She was showing him that he deserved to be protected, that his pain had value, and that he didn't have to bear it alone. The group, now bewildered, finally moved away, murmuring in distrust and fear. Lucas remained silent, trying to process what had just happened. What he didn't know was that that moment, that attitude of Luna's, would be the turning point he so desperately needed to understand that life could be different, that he could be stronger than he imagined. From now on, he would no longer see himself as a helpless victim. Luna had given him something he never thought possible: the courage to fight, the courage to stand up for himself. And that prepared him for what was to come next, the true test of his strength, his ability to face adversity, and finally free himself from the pain of bullying that had imprisoned him for so long. The day after the incident with the boys was different. When Lucas entered the school, a strange feeling enveloped him. It was as if the weight on his shoulders had lifted, even if only a little. He knew that the situation hadn't changed completely, that the bullying was still there, lurking around every corner, but something had changed inside him. What Luna had done for him had been more than a physical defense. She had awakened in him a strength he hadn't known existed. For the first time, Lucas felt brave, as if he had a chance to be more than the person who always hid in the dark. He began to walk through the corridors with more confidence, holding his head a little higher, his steps more steady. Not that he was immune to fear or pain, but he felt that now he had something by his side. Something true, something loyal, something that wouldn't leave him behind. That afternoon, Lucas was approached again by the same boys who had mocked him the day before. This time he didn't feel so small, so insignificant. He knew that Luna was at home, waiting for him, and that gave him a sense of strength he had never imagined. But what he didn't expect was what would happen next. The leader of the group, an arrogant boy called Felipe, approached him with that debauched smile, the same smile that always made Lucas feel like an easy target. He seemed eager to continue what he had started the day before, but something was different about Lucas' demeanor. He looked Felipe in the eye, not angrily, but with a calm that even he found strange. The sense of vulnerability that Lucas had always felt was beginning to disappear. He was no longer afraid of what Felipe would think of him, or the words that might be thrown his way. He no longer wanted to be the target. He wanted to be someone with a voice, with a presence, someone who was respected. "Do you want to continue with this?" Lucas asked, his voice firmer than he had ever imagined. The words came out more naturally than he had anticipated, without trembling, without hesitation. Felipe seemed surprised by Lucas' attitude. He looked into his eyes, and for a moment, it seemed that he himself didn't know how to react. The leader of the group, who always controlled the others with laughter and teasing, was now standing still, trying to find an answer that wasn't coming. Lucas didn't back down. He knew that the fear was still there, that it wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to face it. He felt a strength inside him, something that came from much more than simple courage. It was the confidence that Luna had awakened in him. He felt he had the chance to change everything, to not let anyone else step on his dignity. After a few seconds of silence, Felipe looked at his friends and nodded. He knew he could no longer make Lucas the easy target he had always been. Instead of continuing his teasing, Felipe walked away, muttering something incomprehensible to himself. That interaction, so simple but so full of meaning, marked the turning point in Lucas' life. He didn't just stand up for himself, he stood up for himself. He was no longer the boy who hid at the back of the room, voiceless. He had found his voice, and he would no longer be silenced. As the boys walked away, Lucas looked away and silently thought of Luna. He knew that, because of her, he had been able to take that step. If it hadn't been for his Pitbull's courage, he would never have believed he was capable of standing up. In that instant, Lucas understood the power of what Luna had done for him. She had not only protected his body, but his soul. She had made him believe that he had value, that he wasn't what people said, or what the world tried to force him to be. He had taken a step towards his own transformation. He knew that there was still a long road ahead, that the challenges and obstacles would continue, but that day would be a milestone. He felt stronger, more capable. And at that moment, Lucas knew he was no longer alone. Luna, his faithful friend, was with him, and nothing else mattered but that. Lucas' journey of transformation had only just begun. He was ready for the next battle, not against others, but against the limitations he had imposed on himself for so long. That day was etched in Lucas' memory as the moment he left behind the fragile version of himself. He was no longer the boy who hid in the corner, afraid of other people's sharp words. The bullying still existed, yes, but what Luna had done for him was much more than a simple act of defense. She had given him the courage to stand up, to believe in his own strength. And even though Lucas' life hadn't changed overnight, something inside him had been profoundly transformed. He no longer saw himself as vulnerable, but as someone capable of facing challenges, someone who could be strong and, at the same time, maintain his essence. Lucas's friendship with Luna wasn't just a bond between a boy and his pit bull. It was a lesson in loyalty, courage, and self-discovery. With every affectionate glance and protective gesture, Luna taught Lucas that he had more value than he thought. He finally understood that true strength didn't come from avoiding confrontation or hiding his insecurities, but from facing them head-on. Lucas no longer had to wait to be defended by others or by external situations. He had discovered the strength that resided within him and knew that, with or without Luna by his side, he would have the courage he needed to keep going. The bullying didn't disappear immediately, but Lucas now faced the difficulties with confidence he never imagined he would have. He began to behave with a new attitude, and the people around him began to notice. It wasn't just about how he walked or talked, but about the energy he transmitted. He began to surround himself with people who respected him and saw him differently. And while the pain of bullying was still present, he knew that it wasn't something that could define his future. Most importantly, Lucas learned that when you have the courage to be who you really are, it doesn't matter what others say or do. True transformation comes from within. He was no longer the victim. He was the protagonist of his own story, and with Luna by his side, he knew that nothing would stop him from moving forward. He had finally found the freedom to be himself. Just for those of you who like a good story and have watched to the end, Leave your comment below from which city you're watching, and I'll leave a heart in your comment. Bye, and see you in the next video.